Central Time, the departing Expedition 34 crew and the remaining Expedition 35 crew members had an opportunity to say farewell to one another in the small passageway linking the Soyuz TMA-06M spacecraft with the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Zvezda service module on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. As the crew members said goodbye to one another, it set the stage for the closing of the hatches and the beginning of the journey home for Ford, Novitsky, and Tarelkin, who were launched back on October 23rd last year from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, arriving on board the International Space Station on October 25th. As you can see in this replay of the video from 5 hours ago, the departing crew made its way into the hatchway to the orbital module, the upper portion of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft, after which they had an opportunity to say a few final words to one another before closing the hatch and beginning the process of leak checks that resulted in an airtight seal and the depressurization of the vestibule, the small passageway that you're seeing between the Soyuz and Poisk, before they donned their Sokol launch and entry suits, conducted leak checks of those suits in the precursor to the actual undocking that took place a couple of hours later. Once again, you're seeing the final farewells as Oleg Novitsky, you can see in the hatchway the Soyuz commander wiping down the hatchway to make sure that no debris would interfere with the closing of the hatches and the leak checks that would ensue. The crew members saying final farewells to one another. The Expedition 35 crew on the space station side of the docking interface now left as a three-man crew with Expedition 35 Commander Chris Hadfield of the Canadian Space Agency, his NASA flight engineer crewmate Tom Marshburn, and Russian cosmonaut Roman Romanenko, who will be a three-man crew for the next 2 weeks until the launch of Pavel Vinogradov, Chris Cassidy, and Alexander Mazurkin in the wee hours of March 29th, 2 weeks from today, as they begin their journey to the International Space Station on a single-day launch to docking, expedited fast track of 4 orbits in 6 hours from launch to docking. They will join up with Hadfield, Romanenko, and Marshburn to re-up to a 6-man crew on board the International Outpost and Expedition 35. Again, this is video that was captured at 3:38 p.m. Central Time this afternoon, about 5 hours ago, as the crew members said farewell to one another before closing the hatches between the Soyuz TMA-06M spacecraft and the Poisk module to begin the preparations for undocking. Romanenko on the left in the red shirt, and Chris Hadfield snapping final photos of his crewmates before the closing of the hatch that you'll see just a moment from now. As you watch this replay, we now are hearing that the sun is rising at the landing site. It is dawn at the landing site on the steppe of Kazakhstan, and we'll talk about the helicopter deployments for the search and recovery forces in just a moment. But the sun is beginning to rise at the landing site. It is extremely cold. The temperature is hovering just over 0 degrees Fahrenheit at this hour. The sunrise and the sun expected to warm the landing site by a few degrees, but it is going to be very, very frigid conditions for Ford, Novitsky, and Tarelkin at landing. Now you see the hatches being closed and secured on the station side of the docking interface. A similar hatch closure took place on the Soyuz side of the docking interface and the commencement of leak checks to ensure that we had an airtight seal between the two docking interfaces prior to undocking.